You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. My guests, Kweku Bako, Clara Berry Kasati, Alexander Kwamina Finyoban King, and John Abdullahi Jinapo. And here we are on the next very important subject matter, Ghana losing $190 million. Because what happened? That is the question. Are the speculations and the suspicions correct? Of course, people who matter in this area, including the chairman of the Public Accountability Committee, who has also been with the COSECA, the group that has been following the PDS matter from the very beginning, the concession, not the PDS, the concession matter from the beginning, says this, and this is Dr. Mateo. He spoke to Francis Aban, and he said, the reason we are where we are today is because the parties who had conspired to shortchange this country could not agree on how to share the booty. I see a grand design to terminate this concession, get rid of those difficult elements within the Ghanaian shareholding partners, and then recreate a new vehicle, and then bring the cronies, and then share the booty. How far is this from the truth about the circumstances leading to the letter, very tall letter, 5 pages, written by the finance minister to the MCC, that's a Millennium Challenge Account Corporation, and also the reply received from them saying categorically that the termination is something they disagree with, and that on the basis of that, we are losing something in the compact that was to benefit from. Ghana is clear that there was something wrong, particularly with the payment security for the bulk supply agreement, that there was an invalid payment security. The Millennium Challenge Corporation supports the FTI, that's the report done by it through the MIDA, that there was a valid payment security. So this is where we are, but what is the way forward? Let's listen to Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah. He addressed the media in the course of this week, and we expect the finance minister to also address the media sometime next week to tell us the way forward. But there are propositions about how to go about this more correctly and to avoid this particular situation going forward. Let's hear Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah.
Suspected to meet a material and fundamental term of the concession agreement, which was to deliver and maintain valid payment securities for the transfer of assets. On the American side, though the insurers have indicated that they do not intend to stand by the purported guarantees, the view is that a termination is unwarranted and a restructuring will be more tolerable. As we have mentioned, the two sides were not able to agree on a common path to resolve this point. The government of Ghana, consequently, from 9:30 a.m. today, is commencing the process to terminate. The necessary documentations are being filed with PDS and the Energy Commission. It is expected that residual matters between ECG and PDS will be resolved with dispatch. ECG has remained in possession of assets, while PDS has been assisting it with some limited services in the period during which the concession was suspended prior to this termination. The government of Ghana and the US government will continue to work together on other development cooperation projects. This, for the avoidance of doubt, has not been a crisis of confidence. It has been a difference in opinion, which we have mutually agreed to respect. Now, government hereby also addresses a number of issues that have been raised during this intervening period. First, Could this failure to deliver and maintain valid securities have been discovered earlier? The view of the government is that, to the extent that the actual documentation to bring the concession agreement to a close will end in September, including the conditions subsequent, anything that was transpiring up to that September timeline, which second, has the government been negligent in this transaction? Never. The government of Ghana has at all times worked with MCC in structuring this transaction in the best interest of Ghanaians. No effort to get Ghana a good deal has been spared. Third, is it true that the transaction was botched by some machinations of government? Government has not been up to any machinations. The intent has been to ensure efficiency in the ECG turnaround program and the fulfillment of the broader compact all along. Was there something wrong with switching from 80-20 to 49-51? Absolutely not. The government holds the view that in transactions of this nature, Ghana and Ghanaians should be given an opportunity to get a deep end of the stick as much as is possible. Was there something wrong with switching from bank guarantees as opposed to insurance guarantees? Our views are the two have the same effect. There was nothing wrong with this change. It was the only feasible path at that stage since the tariff methodology had not been made available as at that time. Is government still interested in private sector participation? Yes, government is interested in private sector participation. In the coming days, the minister responsible for finance will be outlining how we intend to achieve private sector participation in the ECG turnaround program still, even in the absence of this particular option. Should government have acquiesced to the MCC pressure to save the $190 million US grant? We do not believe so. The view of government is that to the extent that we're advised, and we believe same to be true, that the concessionaire had failed in delivering and maintaining valid securities, it was not possible to go along that route. The government of Ghana in 2014, during the Mahama administration, signed up to the compact agreement and opted for private sector participation in the ECG turnaround. The Akufo-Addo administration lifted Ghanaian participation from 20% to 51% to ensure that while Ghana benefits from both the technical and financial muscle of the leads, Ghanaians have the opportunity to participate more significantly in the non-technical parts of the concession. The government believes that any transaction of this nature must be structured to give Ghana and Ghanaians a significant play. Additionally, the government ensured that no jobs were lost in the transfer process, and no jobs will be lost even in this termination process as well. The decision that the government has had to take, as difficult as it is, despite the significant international pressure, is necessary in our view to protect and preserve the assets of ECG and Ghanaians. President Akufo-Addo took a solemn oath before God and the Ghanaian people that he will be faithful and true to the Republic of Ghana, that he will dedicate himself to the service and well-being of the people of the Republic of Ghana, and he has done exactly that despite the pressure. The $308 million US already secured will be utilized to improve the parts of the program, such as the primary substations, etc. Measures have been put in place to ensure a smooth transition fully to ECG, and shortly I would invite the Deputy Energy Minister, the Honorable Reku Edu, to outline some of those measures. The government has been committed to ensuring and will continue to ensure that even in this period, has been and will continue to be stable. Dumso is a thing of the past. We also do not expect interruptions in power supply as a result of this decision. Now, before I invite the Honorable Deputy Minister, I want to quickly deal with some other political matters that have come up during this period. During the intervening period, government also noticed several actors, political and civil society, who weighed in on the matter with some views. And we note sections of the Ghanaian community that have proffered well-meant suggestions. Our view is that when your nation is at the crossroads, you back it, you wish it well, and you support it. We also note in particular the opposition NDC that has only sought to make political capital out of this with the hopes that it will inure to their parochial benefit. They have consistently made efforts to pitch Ghana against foreign investors, and this is not the first time. In the FT transaction, they sought to report the sovereign state to the U.S. government with hopes that the U.S. government will investigate and maybe sanction the Ghanaian authorities. They failed. In the Sino-Hydro transaction, they sought to get the IMF to scuttle the transaction. They failed. In this particular transaction, you will recall that they were quick to seek to get the U.S. government to take over the inquiry and literally push Ghana on where to go. Initially, they claimed that this was because conditions precedent had been changed to conditions subsequent, and that is why due diligence wasn't properly done. This has been proven over time to be mere propaganda and a palpable untruth.
And so that was Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah, the information minister, who led a press conference to state government's position and the developments thereafter after government's tall letter from the finance minister and the Millennium Challenge Corporation's letter, which more particularly, took a completely different position, stating against government's position that there was an invalid payments security. It said that there was a valid payment security. And more importantly, they said that they believe in the sanctity of contracts, and that it appears that for them was a most worrying part, that we had not kept faith to the contracts. Yes, so starting with John Jinapor, who has been in this ministry before and has also been commenting a lot about it. You will obviously share the U.S. position, and some have been asking the question, why are we allowing the U.S. to turn itself into a court and making a determination as to whether or not there was a valid payment security when the government of Ghana has also done its investigations and says that, there is no valid payment security. The team set up by the government of Ghana, that was their finding. And they made a finding based on information that all of us have become aware that Al-Qut had denied, all of these things, and even stating that he was going to take some actions against a staff. And they couldn't, be gambling with such a situation. Then the investigations as ordered by MIDA, of course we know it is the MCC, also FTI, comes to say there was an invalid security. Why should we believe and allow the U.S. to act as, a court pronouncing, categorically on a situation? Sanctity of contracts are subject also to various other principles of law. If you misconduct, it doesn't hold.
Well, Samson, I am, and I think I have to voice this. I accepted to be on this program. I was able to travel to the constituency this morning, so let me apologize to them and to greet my constituents. When I got the information that the deputy minister in charge of power was going to be on this program, I thought it was a unique opportunity for us to deal with the matters properly so that listeners and viewers would be well seized with the issues. Because we've discussed this issue over and over.
He's had an emergency situation. He says like you said, because of that he's unable to come.
Well, like you said, I don't determine who comes on this program for government. I just said I wished, and that's why I thought I should apologize to my constituents.
We also really wish that he was able to make it.
I look forward to going there. First of all, the U.S. hasn't taken a position. Let me make that clear. The U.S. hasn't even conducted an investigation. And let me point that clear. It is the government of Ghana acting through its principal agency known as the Millennium Development Authority that contracted an independent reputable body called FTI to conduct this investigation. There is a deliberate attempt to misinform people as if the FTI report is a report from the United States government. The FTI report was occasioned and commissioned by the government of Ghana. And with your permission, let me just make a small quote. Dear MIDA, pursuant to the contract for consultant service between the Millennium Development Authority and FTI Consulting, dated 16th August 2019, kindly find attached an updated summary of findings report. What FTI is doing is that, following a contract, they signed a formal contract with the government of Ghana. Government of Ghana contracted FTI to conduct this investigation. Why? Because the government on one side and PDS on one side had a disagreement. Government says your guarantee is defective, the guarantee is faulty. The Minister of Energy even says that the guarantee was procured through fraudulent means. PDS maintains that no, it was not procured through fraudulent means, and that to the best of our ability, we did what was right, and that we were not culpable, even if the guarantee is defective, and that given the opportunity, we can remedy or rectify that guarantee. So there was some disagreement. Several meetings were held. Several minutes of that meetings, I have seen them. Consequently, government decided that let's get an independent body that has no interest in this matter to conduct investigations. So it is government that contracted FTI to conduct this report.
And you mean by government, you mean MIDA?
Yeah, that's government. MIDA was established by an act of parliament, Act 702, as amended by the various acts.
Okay.
So
MIDA has a 16-member board. Out of the 16 members, there are 3 who do not have voting rights. And there are also another 3 who represent the Association of Ghana Industry,
various interest groups,
and various other interest groups.
Yes.
The remainder of them come from ministries,
Yes.
attorney general,
Government,
and so
yes.
on, and they vote.
Yes.
That is your interpretation when you say government.
No, what I'm saying is that MIDA is an arm of government. It operates under the office of president.
That's correct.
MIDA is constituted by the president. The chief executive is appointed by the president. The board chair is appointed by the president.
Okay. So let's keep to the issue. Let's keep to the issue. MIDA may have instructed the investigations by FTI, but Mr. Kenoforiata's letter to the MCC, not to any other body, was very clear in page 6. He said, FTI Consulting, the auditors chosen by MIDA to undertake the forensic audit requested by MCC. MCC, in their reply, did not challenge this, that they were not the ones who requested the audit to be done. And this is the audit that they place reliance on to use to challenge the investigations done by the team government appointed, led by the Interior Minister, to go to Qatar to do their investigations.
No, I don't see I don't get your drift. No. What do you want to put
I said,
across? Yes.
They have decided to constitute themselves to a sort of a court and have now said that there was a valid payment security as against government's team, which says there was an invalid payment security. And you say it cannot be correct because they are trying to mislead everybody. It is not, they are not 2 different situations, and that MCC has not made any,
I'm saying the MCC hasn't conducted any investigation. I'm saying the government appointed FTI. And if you read the parent document,
MIDA appointed FTI upon the request of MCC.
I'm saying if you read the parent document and go to Article 3, Article 3 of the Compact Agreement stipulates that it is government of Ghana that has the principal responsibility of implementing the compact program. It is government of Ghana's decision. In any case, if government of Ghana wants to play this as an explanation, government has taken a decision that won't go by the Americans' decision. Okay. So this issue of somebody requested is neither here nor there. If government did not have confidence in FTI, they would have stated that, look, we are implementing the program, we are a sovereign nation, we do not have confidence in FTI. to the extent that government of Ghana, through MIDA, went to the extent of signing a contract with FTI, it presupposes that government of Ghana had confidence in the FTI.
It's a fair statement to make that those who are giving the money do not have a say on an investigation to determine whether some wrong has been done. Is that what you're saying?
It is equally a fair statement for those who are giving the money to even suggest how the concession ought to be done. Okay. But I'm saying that ultimate decision, ultimate responsibility, even based on the parent document which was approved by Parliament, and all this draws its strength from the parent document, which is compact to itself.
So what is your position? That there was a valid payment security or there was none?
No, my position is that the Americans only dependent on the investigation commissioned by government. That's all I'm saying.
Investigation that's favorable to them because we can also trace to the fact that they requested it and they would have some influence on it.
How is it favorable to the Americans? How is this investigation favorable? What is the interest of the Americans? To do what? Where is that interest? Rather, government has an interest. And like you quoted, government was determined to oust the local shareholders. So if there was anybody that had an interest, it is government and not the Americans. The Americans have no interest in ECG and who controls the shares, who controls local shares.
You agreed as an opposition party and in Parliament that some wrongdoing had been occasioned. So if government was going to oust them and wanted to ensure that something correct was done, you should be supporting that.
Let's put things within the right perspective.
So now let's begin with your position.
Yes.
Was there a valid payment security? Was there not? That is all that has led us to this point.
No, that is not what has led us to this. No. It's not a payment guarantee.
It's a payment security.
No, it is because ab initio, we went ahead handpicking companies, individuals that had no track record, had no financial muscle, and had no capacity to execute this project.
MCC hasn't said what you just said.
But it is manifesting. Is it not obvious to you that the people we selected did not have the capacity? Is it not obvious? Is it not clear that we did a shoddy job as a government? Is it not clear that in selecting these local companies, we should have done proper due diligence on them? Is it not clear to you that when they were struggling to get the bank guarantee, which was more liquid, our vice president had to water down the situation and give them an insurance guarantee? Is it not clear and abundantly clear that even that demand guarantee or insurance guarantee, they did not have the money to even pay for the premium? Because first of all, as I'm saying, we elected an incompetent body to do the job.
Can we keep to the fact so that you don't prompt me to intervene? When you say our vice president, if he had the opportunity of sitting in a meeting or chairing a meeting to try and resolve a problem, do you say he is the one that watered down the guarantee from bank to insurance? And in any case, you are also being told that there's actually materially no difference between the two of them. So what's the point?
Sometimes I'm a bit surprised.
So that if the insurance
let me just deal with this.
If the insurance guarantee, a valid one, had been provided, there would not have been an issue. What you're saying would be moot.
I am saying, and I made it clear that it's the vice president who chaired the meeting that decided.
You didn't make it clear. You said the vice president watered it down.
No, I said the vice president chaired the meeting.
You didn't use the word chair. I'm the one now referring you to that.
Samson, I think that I want to be clear.
Okay.
And with the greatest of respect to you, whilst you can intervene and I share in your decision to intervene, I'll try and stick to the point so that I can flow. Because normally when I'm flowing and I'm being interjected, it becomes a bit difficult. I'm saying that it's clear that the vice president chaired the meeting. Following that meeting, it was realized that this group could not meet the bank guarantee, which led to a changing of that bank guarantee to an insurance guarantee. It is clear and incontrovertible that even that demand guarantee, they couldn't even pay for the premium. And all this stems from the fact that we did not do proper work in terms of selecting the companies. Because one, I hold the view that when you were selecting the local companies, it should have been done through a competitive process. It should have been open. It should have been advertised. Number two, when these companies were assembled, we should have checked their background, their track record, and their financial muscle, as well as their technical capability. Because in the concession itself, the agreement was that you do 60% financial strength and 40% technical strength. So in terms of the weighted average, what you were looking for was a stronger financial muscle. But as the events have turned out, it is quite obvious. And that's why I say that, look, this problem for me transcends this demand guarantee. Even if they had met the demand guarantee, would have had similar challenges.
Oh, why?
They wouldn't have been able to raise 100 million capital to inject, because they didn't have that capacity. They couldn't even raise 12 million, let alone raise 100 million per annum. So it's bigger than this demand guarantee issue.
But the point of due diligence which you seek to indict the government, was the due diligence done by the International Finance Corporation, or it was the job of the government, qua government, to do?
Look, the due diligence job was the duty of government and ECG, and I shall prove that to you. The lease and assignment agreement, the bulk supply agreement, was signed between ECG and PDS. Actually, the demand guarantee was issued to ECG before ECG would hand over its assets. The only part government came in was when government gave the government consent and support agreement. And so if ECG was the recipient of the demand guarantee, it was only proper that ECG did proper due diligence before handing over the assets. It's a fair comment.
Okay.
But go and read the FTI report and listen to what ECG said. That finally, the letter mentioned that, this is a letter ECG wrote to the Minister of Finance. During the joint CP committee meeting held on 27th, they had escalated several concerns. What were the concerns? That the payment securities had been signed on behalf of Al-Qut by Ainlori, a manager in the reinsurance department, and that a confirmation should be obtained that Al-Qut was in compliance with the laws and regulations. That's one. ECG wrote to government saying that, look, the person who has signed the insurance guarantee was not proper. Two, let us confirm the insurance guarantee before we hand over. That was ECG's position. ECG also maintained that the demand guarantee itself were materially different from the payment securities required by the LAA and the BAC. What is the LLA? That's the lease and assignment agreement,
right,
and the bulk supply agreement. ECG said that the demand guarantee that was presented to them was materially different from what was required to satisfy that agreement.
And on this occasion, you are separating ECG from government, right?
What I'm saying is that ECG wrote to the Minister of Finance.
All right.
Whether we choose to separate it or not, these are the facts. Escalating concerns to the Minister of Finance that, look, we cannot confirm the demand guarantee based on these three main reasons. One, the person who signed it didn't have the capacity. Two, that we should contact the company directly and seek confirmation. Three, that the demand guarantee itself was fundamentally different from the requirement. So, Samson, what else do you require as a government in terms of prompting before you proceed with this agreement? And when I listened to Kojo Oponkroma, his concern was that, look, they wanted to meet the conditions of the Americans. Today, the very people who are telling us that, look, we are standing up to the Americans, he himself concedes that, look, they had to rush through this process because they were supposed to meet a certain deadline. And so proper due diligence was not done. And this is the crux of the matter. If we are taking our time and stand up to the Americans and say, look, please hold on a moment, let us do what is proper, we wouldn't be where we are. And this is a fact.
Okay, let's hear from an insurance, expert, Edgar Redu, who has a completely different position from the claims that there was actually not the payment security was invalid and that we had actually not secured one. Let's hear him and find out if he has a different view after listening to the expert who clearly says that government was wrong on this note. And then we can move forward. Yes, Edgar Redu. All right, so we have some difficulties with that, but he has been very clear in stating, among other things, that if you look at the way in which the insurance guarantee was procured, in fact, it does look like, in the end, it is not correct that if we are looking to fall on that, we will not have it. And that it is not actually Al-Qut that you'll be falling on, because they went through a certain process, beginning with Carl Bank and going through Danwell Insurance. Al-Qut was erythrocessionaire or something like that. And that is not correct to say that when we need the money, we can't get it. All right.
So I want to quickly
yes.
move on to the way forward.
The way forward,
I just thought that I should deal with this issue of demand guarantee. That government knew there were challenges with the demand guarantee, ab initio. And so this story of continuous, what do they call it? Continued due diligence is neither here nor there.
Okay.
Edgar and Co. are in that sector. They can deal with the issue of whether that demand guarantee, so properly secured and procured, was fit for purpose or not. I don't want to get into that, but I want to establish the fact that government of Ghana and government officials knew, as at the date we're transferring these assets to ECG, that the demand guarantee was problematic. How can we knew that it was problematic and raised it?
So let's get to what you expect to happen. What you expect to happen.
Let's deal with that. Now, if you take the Americans' letter, government made proposals to the Americans. That's a fact. To say that, look, we cannot keep PDS. However, we want to terminate. We still want to be within the private sector participation. Bear in mind, the compact has 6 main areas. The ECG financial and operation turnaround is the bigger one. We're spending $149 and $190 million on that project alone. So the bulk of the money goes there. Government of Ghana then makes proposals through Kenneth Orietta that give us 3 months. Let us do what we call restrictive tendering, and then we shall select a company so that we'll continue. The United States government, through its embassy, this time not through MCC, what it means is that they've escalated it, issued a statement saying that no, we can't go with government's proposal. We're terminating the ECG concession agreement, we are withholding the money, and this is the way forward. So clearly, it tells you that there's disagreement between government of Ghana and disagreement with the United States of America. That has far-reaching implications, and I think that going forward is something we ought to be concerned with. This is something that we ought to be building bridges, because when these things happen, it's not just with the Americans. It has implications even with your multilaterals and your bilaterals. Already, we have this visa issue with the Americans we haven't resolved. So I think that we should look at that. And when the minister held that press conference, I thought that it was a unique opportunity for the minister to open a new page. I thought that it was a unique opportunity for the Minister of Information to say that, look, a lot has gone under the bridge. This is where we are. We have terminated. Let us make progress. This is where we want to go. But you listen to him, he spent more than half of his time chastising the NDC and claiming that we're inconsistent. We have been consistent all this while that the PDS structure will not work and is not fit for purpose. We have never wavered. We've never moved away from that assertion. Now, ECG itself has had to take over its assets, and that is where I want to focus. Samson, one, I hold the view that the ECG board must be restructured. I hold the view that TUC must have a representation on that board. I hold the view that AGI, which is a key participant, because electricity, in my opinion, is meant for economic growth. And so the Association of Ghana Industry, the Ghana Employers Association, the Trades Union Congress, a representative from the banking sector, because they give the financing to stimulate that sector, ought to be represented on that board.
What's the composition of that board now?
Government just appoints people. That's it. So
it's not institutional representation.
No.
You want it to become institutional representation.
I think it should be institutional representation. That's number one. Number two,
that may happen only by law.
Oh yes, but once we build consensus, the way forward then is an operational mechanism. But let's build consensus first.
Okay. Yes. Number two.
That is one. Number two, I hold the view that the MD should not be appointed prior to the composition of the board. I hold the view that the board should be constituted. Then the board, through a competitive process with a reputable recruitment agency, would do a transparent process and then recruit the top management.
What's the purpose of that? What will that serve?
The purpose is that when you do a competitive process, rather than government just appointing, then you can get the best of the best. That's one.
So you are suggesting that the composition of the board and the mode of appointment presently is part of the reason we are where we are.
Yes, I hold that view. I hold that view.
You were just pointing to us a while ago that ECG was the one writing and pointing out things that were materially different from what had been submitted earlier, leading to further due diligence to discover, the problems that have come to light.
My answer to you, if I were the board chair, having raised this issue, I would not agree to transfer the assets under any compulsion. And that if push comes to shove, I would resign on principle because I had escalated these issues. That is even why I think the board chairman must be fired immediately. Having raised these critical issues, that goes to the core of the matter. The board chair has no business sitting on that board. The MD had no business sitting on that management. Because of what I'm saying, and these are legitimate issues that I'm raising, so that the top management will sign performance contracts. They'll be giving KPI.
So why are you attacking the ECG and its board rather than the MIDA?
I'm coming there.
Which entity?
Oh,
it's actually the one that calls the shots.
They will hear from me in 2 seconds. I haven't dealt with this. In 2 seconds, I will zoom onto the MIDA board itself.
Quickly.
And to the ministers. The MIDA board itself failed woefully. You brought in the aspect of the IFC. Look, the MIDA itself has a technical arm chaired by Engineer Pepena. And so when IFC makes a proposal, it is the duty of MIDA to peruse that and to determine whether it is fit for purpose. When it escalates to the board level, the board itself has subcommittees. It is the duty of our ministers serving on that board, the board chair and the MIDA chief executive, to peruse those documents before approving. And so MIDA cannot be left out of this matter. The other thing has to do with the Minister of Finance.
So you believe the IFC reports, and you like to work with the FTI report, and you like to work with the FTI report, which you have relied on quite considerably for now. And yet you are saying MIDA should take some responsibility when the FTI report hasn't found MIDA to have done anything wrong.
Sometimes I've read the FTI report very well.
Yes.
It has found MIDA to have done a lot of wrong.
Can you show me?
First of all, the FTI report says...
I have read it.
No, the FTI report says...
Yes.
That ECG wrote to the minister and copied MIDA. What did MIDA do?
The FTI report did not take MIDA on for any wrongdoing.
Samson, with the greatest of respect to you, the FTI report doesn't need to state black and white that MIDA is wrong.
This report is a matter of, it's a public document.
Yes,
it's available to all of us. Yes, if you can make a reference, that would be useful. That would be useful. The MIDA board, once again, is composed of John Peter Mawu, Energy Minister, Ken Oforiatta, Finance Minister, Charles Edubuahin, Deputy Finance Minister, Alan Kojo-Chiremating, Trade Minister, Robert Ahunkan-Lunsey, Deputy Minister, Trade and Industry, Honorable Ibrahim Mohammed Awal, Minister for Business Development, Mr. Eliezer Osafo Eje, Ministry Business Development, Cynthia Morrison, Minister for Gender, Gloria Akofo, Attorney General, Mr. Martin Ison Benjamin, Chief Executive Officer of MIDA, and then there are 3 other people who belong to the Private Enterprise Federation, the Association of Ghana Industries, and Ghana Association of Voluntary Organizations. These 3 are the only ones from outside. And then there's another 3, but they don't vote. They are chairman of the ECG board. You have also chairman of the NETCO board, and you have the resident country director, Millennium Challenge Corporation. So you are saying,
I'm reading it for you.
So you are saying that all these people on the MIDA board, what should happen to them?
Let me make a copious comment so that it's unadulterated, which indicts the MIDA board directly. And I read.
Which one is that?
A letter to MIDA from ECG, amongst other things, stating that there was a change in the counterparties to the demand guarantees that were presented and approved by MIDA Board of Directors during its meeting held on 21st February 2019 as attached by Exhibit 16. So how does the MIDA board...
It doesn't say this is a wrongdoing.
I am telling you that ECG wrote to MIDA, telling MIDA that, look, the demand guarantee you brought, there have been changes to it, contrary to the lease and assignment agreement requirement. This is clear.
That's a wrongdoing on the part of MIDA. You are looking to fix
this
MIDA
is
with
gross
wrongdoing.
negligence on the part of MIDA.
Okay.
And to the extent that they've exhibited such level of incompetence and negligence, they ought to be held liable for their inaction and their failure to do what was proper and the duty of care that we entrusted to them.
How should they be held liable?
How else should they not be held liable?
How?
Samson,
what do you want?
I'm surprised I did.
That
okay,
a crime has been committed, they should be prosecuted or what? How?
We have stated in our press conference. No, let me tell you that first of all, dissolve that board.
Okay.
They are not fit to sit on that board.
Okay.
We entrusted to them some responsibility. Right. They had a duty of care to the people of Ghana. They failed in that exercise and they should go. Finally, I beg you. Finally, I am advising government to exercise maximum restraint and hold back from rushing to introduce any private sector participant in ECG.
Okay, thank you. Hold
because
it there.
The minister said that,
John,
and I completely disagree with him.
Thank you. Hold it there. But once the MIDA board is dissolved, I don't know whether it will be reconstituted. And if it has to be reconstituted by the law, these are the ministers who must come. So who should come? Or we must change the law and bring some other people to come.
Who's the ministers?
You should what?
Let it go to the extent of the ministerial level.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Kweku, I'll hear from you. We hear from Clara, and then we come to Afenyo Marking. Last week here on this show, you practically told us everything else that we have come to know, except tell us that the deal had been terminated. Where we are, people say, and they are justified to suggest that someone did some wrong. Someone must answer for that wrong.
Well, you know, definitely, if something hadn't gone wrong, there would have been no termination.
Exactly.
Government's own delegation that went to Qatar came back with a report that indicated that something had gone wrong.
That's right.
To the effect that the guarantee, and for me that's the principal issue.
Yeah.
No other matters.
It is. That is really what it is.
The principal, the core of the matter, that guarantee was defective and indeed procured fraudulently. There are many other documents you should read together. Apart from the government report, which I'm sure you've seen and we discussed here some time ago, there are also a lot of attachments, email correspondence and things, which were all part of the investigative process. Of course, you can't put all in one report. When you read all those things together, the interaction between Ghana government delegation and Al-Qut and Al-Qut's lawyers, international chambers or something, law chambers, painted a picture of fraudulent procurement of the guarantee.
They didn't paint a picture, they stated so.
I hear you.
Categorically, they didn't mince words.
I hear you. And indeed, as we speak, Al-Qut has taken criminal action against the man who signed.
Because that's what they said has happened.
Yes. Right now, there's criminal prosecution underway.
Okay.
And then in UK, there's an arbitration underway. They've dragged Joe Australia. Joe Australia has sued them rather, Al-Qut. Apparently they found out that it had been a subculture. That particular officer and two other officers over the period had been doing that.
The Yahya Al-Nouri
or whatever the name it is, I'm unable to pronounce it.
Al-Nouri.
Yes. Apparently, together with Joe Australia, they've done similar things which nobody detected until the Ghanaian one came up. So when the Ghanaian one came up, Al-Qut decided to do internal review, and realized that Joe Australia had been collaborating with some of his employees to do that kind of thing, which had been going on for a period. They are thanking the Ghanaian side, particularly ECG, for dealing with them and leading them to this discovery.
Because their point is that until ECG wrote to them directly to find out about and to confirm these guarantees, they were unaware?
Completely unaware.
Okay.
And they also realized that earlier ECG correspondence and communications to them had been intercepted by that gentleman. So, and replying, we're responding to ECG in the official, as if it's a code that is communicating.
Okay.
It turned out one of the letters then got to the man who is the main guy. Then he said, hold on. So through ECG, they then did the trail of correspondence and realized that quite a lot of correspondence had come to them, but had not reached the appropriate officers. All what I'm saying here is documented. I have all the emails between Al-Quds, their lawyers, and the Ghana government and ECG. It's all here. So for them, they are very thankful that this has happened. And as I speak, there's arbitration going on right now in the UK between Al-Quds and Joe, Australia. But you see, so something went wrong, whether we like it or not. And I don't have a problem at all with us probing what went wrong, identifying the people who were responsible for what went wrong, and dealing with the issue. I don't have a problem with that.
Yes, you may not have a problem with that. If you don't have a problem with that, then are you not in a position to identify where the wrong was occasioned and who must take some blame?
And to be fair, I'm
beyond blame, be held accountable, like John has
I have no
done.
problem with that. Last Wednesday, I said same thing.
Okay.
That after all, the finance minister himself, in his statement, the leaked one, made a point that they've handed over the matter to the Criminal Investigations Department. I don't know whether you saw that line.
Yes,
yes, it's in there. So there's even an admission that something might have gone wrong that could potentially be criminal. I don't have a problem. Whatever statement I'm making.
That line, however, suggested to me that he was referring to the original matter as referred to the CID, which then led to the investigations which have now been concluded. So there's nothing pending, really.
Yes, but I'm saying that it means that there's something that ought to attract the interest of the Criminal Investigation Department. There is something. The conclusion doesn't mean we are purging anybody of responsibility. I don't have a problem with that. Indeed, accountability, the principle of accountability would demand that that exercise is undertaken. So I don't have a problem. But you see, I'm not sure about this thing that Americans have no interest or had nothing to do with the investigations the FTI conducted. They do have. Indeed, that project was funded by MCC. It was commissioned by MIDA, but it was funded by the MCC. And look, August 14th, the Ghanaian government delegation that went to the US met MCC. If you read the minutes, and maybe I have to refer to it. See, at this minute, it was based on this whole controversy. Gov't Odami, who was part of the Ghanaian delegation that went to the US. The Ghana government apparently had finished this report. This is August 14th, and had delivered a copy to MCC. They met on it. Gov't made it very clear at the meeting that Al-Quds has totally disclaimed the demand guarantees and asserts that the signatory to the demand guarantees was not authorized, and that Ghana government was proceeding to terminate. The MCC vice president, his name is I don't know if I'm pronouncing it well, Kim Shea, it's Kyeh.
Yeah.
I don't know, I may have mispronounced. This is what he said. He says, due process at this point would be to hire an independent third-party forensic audit. MCC understands that MIDA is prepared to do this. This can be completed in 15 days. A thorough investigation that can be presented to both the government of Ghana and the MCC. The outcome of the audit will determine next steps per the legal process laid out in the compact and concession agreements. See, principally, the FTI thing, which the Americans describe as an independent audit process, was not managed by the Ghanaian government. Hence, the Ghanaian government's alternative investigation in Qatar, a report of which was submitted.
Can we get clarity on it? That it wasn't managed by
But
them.
I think everybody was quiet when you were making your point. So allow him to make his point. All of us were quiet.
You are not the host. He is the host.
No, because you are trying to interrupt.
Every right to make
Gentlemen, with the
You
greatest of
want to
respect
host.
to you, with the greatest of respect to you,
Are you not the host?
let's respect our audience. Okay,
Yes.
let's respect them. I think that the presentation he's made so far, there is no ambiguity requiring my intervention. That's why I have not done so. Please proceed.
Otherwise, perhaps we were talking of an exercise in duplication. That Ghana government launches one investigations, which is funded by MCC, and the same government launches another one that is headed by the Interior Minister. I'm not too sure we should even be worrying ourselves about this. But it is clear, Samson, that the FTI report and the Ghana government report, there was some coincidence of observations. But there was also the fact that you could see the Ghanaian government report a bit more radical and direct. If there was no difference between the two, why do you think the Americans are saying that we accept the FTI report and on basis of that, we think the concession, the guarantees are valid? Because the FTI report makes some conclusions that really says that, look, whatever the challenges of the guarantees are, they are curable even within Qatari law. And Ghana government's position is that, look, this agreement is backed by Ghana law. So obviously, there's no doubt that the two reports were going in different directions. Hence, the disagreement between the US government, MCC, on one side, and the Ghana government on the other side.
Yes, so Koku, we know the bottom line. The bottom line is that the Ghana investigations was emphatic
Yes.
in saying that because of the express denial of the existence of the demand guarantee submitted by PDS to ECG and the declaration by Al-Quds of its intention not to be bound by any present or future legal obligation arising from that, Ghana was certain that there was not a valid payment security and that the transfer to PDS never became effective. The Americans say they base their reliance on the FTI report and say that there was a valid security, payment security.
Yes.
So now we know this is the matter.
Yes.
Question is, so who are we looking at who has done what?
No, look, if the Ghanaian government had not terminated this agreement, this concession, based on the facts available to it, I would have been very sad. Look, that would have been the height of irresponsibility. It's different if you don't know. But if the information is brought to you, the facts and details have been brought to you, and you realize that this thing is actually incurable, as opposed to what the Americans were asking us to do, I think the Ghanaian government acted responsibly in this case. See, and let's get the sequence right, please, because listening to my brother John, I thought the sequence were a bit...
So the question is, what should happen?
Well, the first thing is terminate. See, you know, it was on this table somewhere 2015 that I made a concession and went along with private sector participation in ECG. And it was based on the forensic audit that the MCC had conducted and the things we had done with ECG over the years. We put in a lot of money in ECG and never got the results. So I compromised that, look, in spite of one's ideological orientation, I think I've come to the level that private sector participation is okay. Right now, we've gone back to the original situation where the state has assumed control, but it's obviously an interim measure. It's obviously. So they are going to have to go forward with the private sector participation option relative to ECG. I think that one, we all perhaps must wait for the Minister of Finance's projected public statement.
Okay, so let me be a bit straightforward with you. He speaks about MIDA and how they should be held liable to some extent. They were responsible for postponing the transfer dates 3 times just to accommodate PDS to be able to do what they needed to do. They were responsible for eventually holding a meeting to agree that let's change from bank guarantee to an insurance guarantee.
All the players were involved. All the players. IFC, Horton Andrew, MCC, MIDA, ECG, and the Ministry of Finance and Energy. And the minutes are here, emails, all of them were involved. And they all went, first of all, changing the structure, changing the nature of the guarantee from the bank one. Look, the FTI report that we all look at, it's there. They give reasons for the inability of PDS.
The tariff methodology that has delayed from the PURC.
Yes. This report itself acknowledges that in the absence of those 2 things, it was difficult for PDS to raise the bank guarantee. They all went through it, and as I have all the minutes here, including the emails, they all went through it. When the draft guarantee came, they all examined it. This meeting we talk about at the Jubilee House, not Flagstaff House though, Jubilee House, ECG was present. The one they've been highlighting the role of the vice president, who was chaired, is the Condition Precedence Committee, okay, headed by Akoto Ampao. Every single person was there. MIDA was there, ECG was there, Ministry of Finance was there. They were all there when the decision was taken that, okay, this is the decision. Instead of bank guarantee, it is insurance guarantee.
So we can say that all these people collectively have cost us financial loss of $190 million.
No, you see, you are a lawyer, I'm not. And I'll be the last person to actually contest a legal opinion coming from a lawyer. But you know that financial loss, just mentioning it means nothing. How was it occasioned? Recklessly?
It has to be willful.
Willful, that kind of thing. So throwing out that thing about financial loss, well, I'm from the street corner. I can't do law in the law school. Okay. But the truth is that I know you were just throwing it for us to look at because others have spoken about it. Okay?
But before you take a break, what do you say about Dr. Matea? He says, the reason we are where we are today is because the parties who had conspired to shortchange this country could not agree on how to share the booty. I see a grand design to terminate this concession, get rid of those difficult elements within the Ghanaian shareholding partners, and then recreate a new vehicle, and then bring cronies, and then share the booty.
Well, you know, I wish you hadn't asked me to give my opinion on this, because he's one person I respect a lot. Very, very intelligent person. He's a professional. Where he deals with, it's good.
And he's with COSECA. They follow this process from the very beginning.
He's a fantastic brain. But I see a situation where suspicions, rumor mongering, you know, misinformation, everything being put together. So when I heard that, I then quickly remembered something Justice Akokosa said. So I kept it around me. He says, a string of suspicions, however numerous and however grave, can never be multiplied together to produce proof of guilt.
Republic versus Ali Katsina.
Yes, and this one I'm quoting is 1963, the Kunungugu bomb trial.
Okay.
When he was acquitting and discharging Adama Few, Akwaji, and Kofi Krab. If you read the proceedings, most of the things against these 3 CPP elements were driven by suspicions, rumor mongering.
But Dr. Steve Matea has followed the process from the beginning up to now, and he says,
when he made that statement, did he give you
on the basis of the information and what he knows up to this point?
You know what? He will help this.
So this may not be equal to the judicial statement that a multitude of suspicions, however elevated, cannot constitute proof.
Samson.
Yes.
I will appeal to him to go one step forward and provide something of evidential value. They can go, there are appropriate avenues in this country under our constitution for him to take that info, because it's an explosive info if it turns out to be true. Okay? And so you do justice to this country by moving one step forward. Even Shraj is there.
Right.
Send the evidence there. But if you just go on radio and TV and make the statement you're attributing to him, I didn't hear him say so, but I believe what you are saying. He's judging the case in the court of public opinion. He should move beyond that.
He said this to Francis Aban on Star, and they have also reported it widely.
I appeal to him to do us a great favor by proceeding beyond this radio and TV commentary.
Okay.
And take this
so we are
matter
not
to an
done yet.
appropriate place.
Let's hear Clara. But before we do so, let's now hear Edgar Redu, who has issues. Okay, let's hear Charles Rakubrobe instead. He also had an opinion to share about this development. And Charles Rakubrobe, Dr. Charles Rakubrobe, is an expert, a foremost expert in this area, and has helped this country quite a great deal in that regard.
I think somewhere along the line, certain things were changed, which made us rush things unduly. The injection of the change from a 20% local interest to 51%, which effectively drove away the interest of many of the people who were interested in the whole process. And having been bitten by making so much haste, I do not think we should go along doing things in so much haste, simply because we are bound by some artificial deadline of somebody who wants to be generous to us. Let me remind everybody, over the last 2 years, the government of Ghana, without anybody's prompting, has committed and spent what is equivalent to almost $4 billion restructuring our banks. So I don't think that decisions that we should take concerning our power sector should really be driven by 498 million as somebody has committed to us. I believe that the energy sector of Ghana is more important, or as important as the banking sector. And if we committed $4 billion without anybody pushing us, we should, first of all, define what's in the best interest of Ghana's power sector, what it costs to effect those actions. And then, if we can fit it within the compact, by all means, let's not look a good horse in the mouth. But this whole thing of people thinking that we have to satisfy an external deadline because there's 500 million going away, I don't really see the point. After all, Mr. Addison, who has spent $4 billion of our money, is now chairman of the Board of Governors. It shows that people have confidence in him and have confidence in decisions taken by ourselves. So let's start off by saying, going forward, what lessons have we learned? How should the lessons inform private sector participation?
All right, so Dr. Charles Rakubrobe there. And Clara, if I may start you on the note that I began with John Jinapor earlier, is it okay for us, and we understand that the president takes a view that even though he has some of his own people against him, he says we have to show that this is who we are. We are a nation. We are a country with a sovereignty. We have a sovereignty. We will not allow anybody to beat us to any pressure. When the MCC says we should be honoring the sanctity of contracts, because that is the most important thing, why should we be allowing them to act as a court, like I suggested, to say that there is a valid guarantee, and yet our team also goes to check the thing and say there is not a valid guarantee? Why do they talk about, sanctity as if it has to be in isolation in the legal realm?
Okay. Samson, I don't think this is a question of sovereignty and all of that. I think this is a business transaction. and in the business transaction, the MCC has given its opinion. I think it is up to us to see whether the opinion that the MCC has given is consistent with our laws, because we do have lawyers. We know, we have a very good idea as to the statutory law applying to contracts, and we also have a very fair idea of the court's attitude towards contract. So this, I don't think this is an issue of sovereignty or otherwise. If we shouldn't make it that. This is a business transaction. There are legal issues involved. What is the legal effect of what has happened? And whatever we take as a legal effect of what has happened, backed by authorities, we should be fine to go. If I don't think we should start on a note of more or less seeming intimidated just because the MCCA is a different party. I always say that we like to say that we believe in ourselves and act otherwise. If we believe in ourselves, we should not already start on the notion of afraid of sovereignty. This is no attack on our sovereignty. The MCC has not attempted to attack our sovereignty. The MCC has given its opinion. Whether its opinion is valid or not, it's consistent with what is another matter, which we can debate. And I don't agree with the MCC. It's not just
giving its opinion. It's giving its opinion and says that ought to be the way, or nothing.
It's still its opinion. We have a decision in the matter. And that is when we now have to look at it and see whether this way suits us and act in what we think is the best thing to do.
Okay.
Now, having said that, let me just go through, because the issues of how we arrived at executing the transaction documents, and then the termination, and the issues of whether or not the demand guarantee is valid, whether it's valid security or not. Now, I'm largely a transactional lawyer. And when you're handling transactions of this nature, what you usually would have is a CP checklist. When I say a CP checklist, what I mean is a conditions precedent checklist. Now, you do not execute the transactions until you have completed your checklist. So you actually have your checklist that you take. So you have various aspects in the checklist that you take. One of the most important and the last to be taken to determine whether or not you sign is the legal opinions. And in the legal opinions, you would have gone through the various items that have to be presented in the transaction and then see whether or not they comply. So for example, one of the issues you would have to determine in a key issue like the security, the payment security here, is one, of course, whether or not the payment security has been granted. If the state payment security has been granted, it's not enough. You have to authenticate signatures. So you have a process in the due diligence process that you will authenticate signatures. So you actually demand, in this case, you would have demanded Al-Qut to provide one. Of course, you will take their own company documents and check who are the proper parties to represent the companies. It's one of the key things to determine. When you get who are the proper parties to represent the company, then you now check who has the board authorized to sign this deal. Then you get the company to authenticate that, then also have them authenticate the signatures. It is only after that was done that the legal opinion will now say, I have ticked all the boxes, and I can confirm A, B, C, D. We are ready to sign. What happened in this case? From the documents that are provided to me, the CP checklist on the payment security wasn't ticked completely. Now, although eventually they agreed to bring the demand guarantee, they themselves, even if you look at the minister's letter, it's clear in the minister's letter that, of course, from everything that has happened, they didn't get who the valid people to represent the company was. That wasn't provided. They didn't authenticate signatures. That is only done after the signing. And even from there, you can tell that ECG was not comfortable to sign. From the minister's letter, he makes the point that ECG was compelled to sign.
Yes.
So who compelled ECG to sign a document when they were not satisfied with the CP checklist? And who provided the final legal opinion, who said that the CP checklist has been satisfied, and so we should go ahead and execute? That is where the problem is. So now, and so that is one thing I must mention, that the ECG, from all that I've followed, has demonstrated one thing I'm very proud of them for. They've been very competent. The ECG has demonstrated competence throughout this transaction. So that is one. Now, so that was where the wrong step was taken. When the ECG was not satisfied, even though they were compelled to execute, if you look at the letter, they still were not satisfied. So you see that they still attempted to authenticate the signatures. That's basically what they were doing. So they wrote to find out who are your authorized representatives and who did ABCD. That now led to all of this that has happened. So yes, we took the wrong step in their execution. Fine. Now, if you look at the effect of all the findings that took place, the fact of the matter was that there was no valid payment security. The reason is that, one, like the letter notes, I haven't seen the transaction documents, but the letter notes that the choice of law in the transaction documents is Ghana law. Now, under Ghana law, if a company holds a person out as having capacity to represent them, and you deal with that person, you can bind the company. But if the company does not hold out such a person, you cannot bind the company. So we have what we call apparent authority.
Right.
In this particular situation, apparent authority was clearly negated. And the reason I say apparent authority was negated was that Al-Quds said this person doesn't have authority. So they had, if you were assuming, so once they had negated apparent authority, you can't rely on it. Because if you look at the attitudes of our courts do not promote, I see no evil, I hear no evil. When you are, the courts protect the diligent person. So equity aids the diligent, not the indolent. So if you close your eyes and you see no evil and you hear no evil and you land yourself into trouble, the courts are not going to protect you. So yes, it would have been extremely irresponsible on the part of the government to have proceeded with this contract in spite of the fact that it was clear that Al-Quds was not going to be bound by the contract. It wasn't just the signatories issue. We know that we have regulated industries and we have unregulated industry. This was a regulated industry. And Al-Quds says that their central bank, our equivalent of the Bank of Ghana, should have given them an approval. Now that's part of this, the CP checklist you do, whether regulatory approvals have been given. Now, in our own court, if you remember, our Supreme Court sets aside agreements that requires parliamentary approval, and they didn't take them to Parliament. Then we expect that now, when we go and we didn't get regulatory approval, the court should still respect it. So, in short, I think I don't agree with the MCC when they say that this was curable. The facts, even from the MCC response itself, if you look at the premises that they put down, it doesn't support their conclusion that there was a valid payment guarantee. There was not, in accordance with Ghana law. It
would have been such a bad legal advice for anyone to have advised the government of Ghana that in the face of the statements by Al-Quds, you can still go ahead because there is even the suggestion that the courts...
They don't have capacity to even fulfill it. That was another thing they raised.
They said even present or in future. But pointing to one case in which, you know, somebody had litigated and was successful, it would have been bad advice for any lawyer to tell the government that you should wait and pursue that path. Perhaps you may be lucky.
I would not have advised the government to continue and then in the hope go and... That is actually saying go and chase litigation. Particularly you chase a litigation that one, like you said, the Al-Quds has made you aware that, in fact, we don't even have what it takes to honor this thing. We don't have capacity.
Okay.
So even if you win and they don't have capacity, so I would not, I can't speak for every lawyer, but if I would not have advised government to still go ahead and sign the document. And if I was the one who had responsibility to sign that document, I wouldn't do that.
So if I understand you, what makes it worse is that even before a major problem comes, you have identified and contacted Al-Quds, and Al-Quds has told you that this person doesn't have the authority to sign. So later on, if anything happens, you can't go to court because they will tell you that we had told you long ago.
Actual notice, what we call actual notice.
Okay.
Usually you will try to argue constructive notice. You cannot, and what I said, apparent authority. You can't be relying on apparent authority in the presence of actual notice. apparent authority comes in to protect the innocent person who has done everything they could. They took the relevant steps that they needed to take. But in spite of taking all the relevant steps they needed to take, they still didn't discover that information. You can protect such a person. But not the person who, after taking diligent information, has now found out that you don't have authority and then recklessly goes ahead.
Here in Ghana, in the NIB case, which eventually landed in the Supreme Court and they turned it over, it was on the basis of the principles of law. It was held that an MD who the company was now claiming did not give him the authority to do the transactions that he did, could not be said, you know, not to have had the capacity. And for as long as the third party, the party who was coming into the transaction, was not in the principles of law, you say internal, you know, internal rule, okay, the policy of your internal management rule. So he's not expected to know what you do and how your rules are, that he should have fulfilled all of it. So the court held correctly for the party who was chasing the money, and NIB was slapped with such a huge judgment.
And you must always differentiate.
So we could also take solace in that we could still continue.
You always have to differentiate between the officers who have capacity to represent the company, and they exceeded the authority that was given them. It's a different situation from somebody who doesn't have capacity at all.
Okay.
So in the situation of an MD is the managing director of the company. Right. An MD visibly, ostensibly, has some authority.
If he needed board approval, didn't get it, and
that is a different
consummated the transaction.
That's a different matter. That is internal arrangement.
Okay.
But an MD has capacity to represent the company. The MD is the face of the company. Now that is completely different from a situation where the person is not the MD. And the person is not a director. So even in general law, the person actually doesn't have the capacity to represent the company. So you're not talking that, so there are two different
And in this case, so it is not that you are getting to the end before you discovered it.
You have discovered it already.
All right.
So if you get, like I said, if you take all the steps and then you still don't discover it, they cannot now later on seek to rely on it. But if you take the steps and they immediately tell you that...
So you say government's decision was spot on?
Yes.
They shouldn't have taken any other decision?
Yes. So I think government, when it comes to that, government acted responsibly. But like I said, we have to find out who gave the legal opinion for the CP, for the documents to be executed, and then even though the CP checklist was not completed. And of course, we've made some losses.
And this is where you refer to, paragraph 3 of the statement. It says that page 3, the last paragraph in page 3, that's where it begins. It says, ECG did not receive the requested confirmation and proof of due authorization from Al-Qut by the transfer dates. Out of a desire to ensure the occurrence of the transfer, ECG was compelled, that's the question you are asking, to confirm acceptance of the form of the demand guarantees with an expectation that upon receipt of satisfactory reply from Al-Qut, it will subsequently confirm the demand guarantees in substance and in form. By a letter dated the 13th March 2019, forwarded to ECG by MIDA, Al-Qut purported to confirm the demand guarantees. Now we know that all these later showed to be
So
wrong.
even as a transactional advisor, what you do is you actually put pressure on all of them to meet the CP checklist. And you let the parties know that if you don't meet the CP checklist, in my legal opinion, I'm going to say you haven't met it, so don't execute. And you know they will not execute if you say they should not execute. So usually, they will do everything to meet the CP, and they will meet it. The deadlines would look like you can't meet them, but they would meet it if they understand that we are not going to grant any waivers. So and it's important. That's why you have the whole, you are just there to ensure that, particularly before execution, everything goes in accordance with the plan. So yes, that is where the problem is. Now, the way forward, you were talking. When I looked at the transactions, I've always said that if you look at, like you said earlier on with floods, a lot of our problems are like that. We keep going around in circles. So it's usually the same things we keep talking about and making the same problems, mistakes and all of that. Now, relating to this, if you look at the way the companies, MCC was representing the United States government.
Right.
If you look at the parties who represented the MCC throughout, these were the company's officers, the people who work for the company directly. Now, ECG, where was ECG? throughout, you can see that throughout the transaction, ECG didn't really have a lot of say in all of this. This was really run by the political appointees. And that is actually the source of our problem. The problems of the ECG, the fundamental problems is political interference. And it's because, of course, it is one of the things we treat as the spoils of war. That when we win an election, we see how we can make certain appointments. And of course, then it's based more on political affiliation to a very large extent than everything else. And that's where the problem is. So the problem is not that the people who are working or the managers of ECG are incompetent. That's not true. And I always get sad that we don't give ourselves enough credit. Just like we're trying not to give ourselves enough credit, even though we got the law right in this case, and we wanted to run away because we were already by ourselves intimidated more or less because MCC is not Ghanaian.
Okay.
Now, I believe that the ECG staff, if you let them manage the company in accordance with principles and values that every company is managed, they can handle this. Where has the ECG been in all of this? And even from throughout the transaction, you can see that the ECG has displayed competence, but they haven't been shown the kind of respect that they deserve. So I think the problems with ECG is not because the staff can't manage ECG. It is because of the political interference. So what we have to do is to do away with the political interference and let ECG run. Okay. But then again, like I always say, then we come back and say that, well, we are interfering too much in ECG doing its work. So let's sell the assets of ECG. I thought that if the problem is interference, the solution will have something to do with interference. And I don't believe that the only time we will not interfere is when we bring a foreigner. When we are talking about leadership, we will have to go back to the drawing board and see how we can let our state institutions run in accordance with normal commercial principles. Okay. And I've always said that as Ghanaians, yes, we have political parties, but I've always believed that we can have the national interest and we can still do our politics. But we must know when to have the national interest and when to do our politics. Unfortunately, in this, I don't see the national interest. Even in addressing this, I didn't feel addressed as a Ghanaian because I saw the government more interested in talking to the NDC than in talking to me. So my question, what about me? So in short, I think the truth is that the basics, it is not about management. And if we get this, I'm sure even PDS, it was still ECG that was doing the work.
Okay. Let me go to speak to Theo Echampong. Dr. Theo Echampong, as I announced him earlier, is on the line with us. Thanks very much for your time. And I'll begin from this point. You have said that it's right that the deal is cancelled. And you say the Miracle-led consortium should never have been awarded the concession in the first place, just like John has been saying all along. They did not have the means to raise the necessary financing required to sustain the operations of such a critical national asset. Some of us raised this earlier, but were lampooned. Anyway, water under the bridge now. Going forward, let's get better institutional investors for the asset. There are private pension state funds in Ghana lying idle, including Ghana Infrastructure Investment. And you say this is how we should begin to look at it, and obviously later on look at an IPO so that there can be Ghanaian participation by way of the citizens. How exactly do you propose that government goes forward in the manner you suggest? And I thought that it was really about money, and the money is what the US was going to give us, and now we don't have any more.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's about money. The question is, where is the money going to come from? Of course, yes, the US was proposing to give us part of the money, and then the private sector participants coming in would have also raised in excess of $500 million over the 5 years needed to, maintain or keep up to the contractual obligations under the contract. But what was quite clear to, most of us who are following developments in the sector very on, is that the consortium, that is the Miracle-led one,
you know, did not really have the means to raise the finances. So, for example, even with the insurance or the demand guarantee, part of the money that was used, you know, to finance that came from ECG's own, you know, operational costs, OPEX. The shareholders under the concessionaire, only one of them was able to pitch in about $1 million, but the remaining did not come from them. It came from the operations of the company itself. And that should have, you know, raised part of the red flags at the very kind of initial stage when this was being mooted. But like I said earlier, I think this is water under the bridge. What really, for me, is quite critical is that we need to move forward with this and learn very fundamental, you know, lessons. And as Clara was saying, this approach, this management of it, you know, has been shambolic from day one. And the political interference in how things are managed, especially when it comes to state-owned enterprises in Ghana, historically has always been, you know, an issue. So that's why I think going forward, if we really want to turn around ECG, given that the MCC money may not be coming anymore, then we have to look at other ways of financing. And I think that if you look domestically within Ghana, we have institutional investors, not just individuals who may not have the means, but if you took the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, for example, they could actually pitch in some money and take some shares in that. And then, of course, there are private sector pension funds that are also available and can take a share in ECG. But beyond just providing the financing, I think what is really important is that we need a new management at ECG, and a new management that will be able to actually turn around the fortunes of the company. And the management would have to sign, you know, KPIs. So I would, for example, want to see to what extent will be the remuneration of the management be tied to the ability to reduce, you know, technical and commercial losses over 3, 4, 5 years. And that will be much more fundamental, I think, than even just providing money to turn around the operations of ECG. There are two other things I just quickly want to raise. Besides the issue of money, we know the issue of the non-payment of electricity bills by MDAs. And there's an interesting document that was authored by the government of Ghana called the Energy Sector Recovery Program back in May of 2019.
Okay.
And if I may just quote a little from it in 6.3.3, it says, ECG has lost over $180 million of revenue annually because of non-payment. Of this amount, $150 million or 80% is non-payment by MDAs, ministries, departments, agencies. So roughly almost, you know, 80% of what you need, which was coming in from the MCC, is actually money that the government owes, you know, through non-payment. And I'm asking myself, so could we do without even the MCC amount? Clearly, it's obvious that we can raise the money internally, and even if government met its payment obligations to the MDAs, then we'll be talking about more long-term sustainable solutions. And then in terms of technical and commercial losses, I mean, back in 2018, it was about 23%, and that's roughly about $400 million of technical and commercial losses annually. We need some investment going in there in terms of upgrading the, you know, the bulk supply points and the metering stations to 10 things around. But structurally, those investments, I would think that it would have to come from the private sector, but not necessarily of the form of the type that we saw in the Miracle-led consortium. I think we need to target institutional investors, and particularly, you know, some of the pension funds, and then the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. And then long-term, once we've been able to potentially turn around, potentially look at, you know, doing an IPO of the back of that.
There are some who have actually suggested that, look, in the first place, we didn't need to be running around looking for any support or any money to resuscitate or get ECG working well, and that you don't need private participation for this. The ECG people, they are competent to do this work. They are able to manage the company in a way that all of us will be satisfied with, And we don't need all the money that is actually being bandied about, and that in fact, we need less of that money. So the real thing appears to be what you also suggest, the political interference with the management. How exactly do we get to cut that out?
Yeah, so I think part of the solution to dealing with the so-called political interference is actually having, private sector-led participation in it. If the government is so inclined to say ECG is a strategic national asset, for example, then yes, you can still set up an SPV, arrangement, but take, 20-30% shares in it, and then let others come in with expertise that would actually allow them to run the company more profitably. The problem has been that if the state is appointing the CEO, the state is appointing board members, and at the same time, the state through the Ministry of Finance is the one that may be, injecting monies into ECG, then the state becomes complicit in the whole process. Then that's precisely part of the reason that I think that you actually need different institutional investors coming in, and that allows the government to pull itself out of the whole process for one, but in a way that they will still be able to have some minimum shareholding in there and may still have representation on the board. But the day-to-day decision-making wouldn't necessarily come from the government or the sector ministry, because the set of incentives that the private sector-led participation would bring would be entirely different from the government.
So as far as you are concerned, the institutional buy-in, you have looked at pension funds, among other things. Many times I've heard people say that what ECG is grappling with is obsolete, equipment, and it suffers commercial and technical losses of about 30% every year.
Percent actually.
Right. Now we have 3 million, or how much is it that came to us first? It is only 190 that has been taken away. Do we have any signs or evidence of what has already come in, what it has been used to do to transform it, and do we have any assurance that we are able to proceed without this support?
I think we can actually go without the support.
Okay.
The fundamental question, Samson, I think, is that given where we are now, if the money does not come in, what do we do with ECG? And from where I sit, within the whole energy sector in Ghana, ECG is like the Achilles heel in all of that. The indebtedness in the sector is about 2.7 billion, of which ECG alone owes 1.1 billion. And back in June, some IPPs were even threatening to shut down their operations, and not provide power because of non-payment of bills by the invoices that they are submitted to ECG. And we're even threatening, to trigger the partial risk guarantee under some of the PPAs. So we need to address those issues, technical, commercial losses. The question is the how. And I think that if the MCC money is not coming in, there's enough resources domestically in Ghana that we can actually raise to turn around the operations of ECG. Number two, we need to move the whole government interference, in the running of operations of ECG, away from the state. And part of the way to do that is through a new shareholding or SPV, arrangement that brings in the, institutional as well as potential IPO where individuals can own shares in ECG. Number three, long term, is that the government actually needs to pay its bills. So, for all the hue and cry, it's $190 million that was coming in from MCC for starting.
All right,
I just mentioned the fact that
I'd like to thank you very much, but there's a small thing I need you to respond to. When you are proposing institutional, investment, that is government. So how are we going to deal with, getting government to take its hands off this very important, installation.
Sorry, could you please come again? The line is a little
I'm
faint.
saying that part of your proposals as to the way forward, particularly relying on pension funds and the rest of them, that is government coming, into it through a different way. So when you say we need to get the political interference out, if we use that route, we will never, get government out.
Yeah, but the
as in political interference out.
I'm not talking only about GIF or the pension fund.
Okay.
There are private pension pots that are around, and there are other, equity or mutual funds that also we can tap to. But what they bring in fundamentally is that you would have different shareholders in the company, and each of them would be weighted, or their representation on the board would be weighted according to the equity that they're bringing into the company.
All right.
Number two, it means that they'll be able to actually hire and fire the CEO of the company, and that wouldn't be at the request. Or
all right, Dr. Theo Champong, thank you very much for your time. Dr. Theo Champong is economist, political risk analyst, and senior fellow of Imani Africa. We take a quick break, return to hear from Afenyo Marking. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. And we will hear from Alexander Kwamina Afenyo Marking, what he has to say about the matter we have been discussing so far, the PDS botched deal. You have heard people make suggestions and say that we actually have been claiming that we are stamping our authority and indicating our sovereignty and all of that. But what's the point, really? If we get some of these monies, and the first tranche, there was a tranche that we got for agriculture development. What do we have to show? What is even the guarantee that this money that was coming, we're going to get any improvement in this system? So we should just relax and proceed.
Okay, something. I've heard the debates. I've had my own views. Let's first address the legal issue. How an innocent party treats an offending party in a contract. The bottom line here is that a guarantee which was of material importance to the contract has been found to have a problem. The innocent party here, government, had a choice to rectify and elect to affirm the contract, also terminate. Government chose the path of termination. It is within its right. We have another party, the other party, the MCC, on the other hand, saying that, well, we think that rectify and proceed. Government says no. The nature of it is such that we cannot allow it to go. I am surprised that suddenly our friends in the NDC are not talking about this. Because initially they said that we should terminate this contract. There's a problem with it. There is something called state capture, which my friend has not mentioned today. They have changed their position. State capture. We're also told that, Kelly Gajapo, board chairman of ECG, was being used to do all manner of things as part of the state capture conspiracy. But today, this same Kelly is being praised. I listened to my respected colleague talking about the effort made by ECG. It is not a matter of an independent investigator going somewhere to unearth a rot, but government, as part of its due diligence, writing letters through ECG and getting this feedback. Mr. Bakun showed some documents suggesting that, look, earlier communication to Al-Quds were blocked by this person who held himself to have that capacity to execute a document for and on behalf of our court. We are aware that the government side that paid a visit as part of investigation came out with certain facts. And as we speak, our court is prosecuting that officer. Ghanaians must know this, that Mr. President has acted in good faith. The government has acted in the best interest of Ghanaians. My colleague Kojo Ponkroma addressed the nation, put out the facts that, look, we are terminating because if we continue this deal, it would augur well for Ghana. Then, of course, he also had a duty to address Ghanaians on the misinformation from the NDC side. So I'm sure that's a point I want to re-echo for Clara, that he needed also to address the NDC for their misinformation.
He didn't address the Ghanaians.
Well, sure, but we know that out there, we were told that there was a state capture.
But that's our problem, because it's always like the two of you, NPP, NDC, NPP, so then we don't.
Clara,
it's all right.
I kept quiet for you, please. You know, I kept quiet for you. I kept quiet for you. I'm saying that is politics. You can't take that away. In the US itself today, MCC, you know, they are answerable to Congress. They also don't want congressional hearings. They also want to present their case the way they think will suit their image. Why? They brought a transaction advisor. They brought a lawyer from Virginia. Today, the NDC wants the whole world to believe that MIDA is controlled by government. No, in substance, MIDA is controlled by MCC. Yes, I'm saying so. Wow. And you better keep quiet and listen. Wow. All right? So, from the time that you initiated this whole arrangement to the point where we took over as a government, the only thing that changed, and I want to make that clear again, the only thing that changed was the percentage. The 2080 and the 5149. And as well as the tenure of the lease. From 25, we reduced it to 20. And from 80% foreign, we made it 51% Ghanaian. These are the positive things that this government introduced in this transaction. It cannot be.
You know, Professor Kwekwasari, Stephen Kwekwasari.
Let him tell me what he has said.
Okay. He says this is incompetence.
Okay. That is his view, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And if you act incompetently, something must follow.
What is very well? What is his basis for saying so? I will know.
In the end result.
Is it? I won't deify his comment. I won't deify it. Let me make my point.
But it would have been fatal. The government didn't cure the mischief.
If today, after being blamed,
it would have been fatal.
If today, after being blamed, that hey, there is fraud, the Al-Qut is denying the guarantee, terminates, there is state capture, family and friends, cronies sharing the booty. If the government was indeed sharing a booty, why would the government terminate? I mean, let's talk about the issues. Not allow people to sit somewhere and imagine and speculate. This morning, I have listened attentively to my respected colleague sitting to my left. He has repeated his political views, not sharing with us an expert view on this matter. You ask, what is the way forward? He has none.
Oh, he's giving some.
No, which way forward? He has none. He has none.
I think this way you must.
He has none.
Okay.
You must protect me. He can't make such false statements against me.
We are running out of time.
Samson, you are the host. He cannot make such false statements against me.
You can't concoct your own things and put them on. No problem. All the days are not equal.
Yes, we are running out of time. And I must say thank you.
You can't do falsehood about me.
Thank you very much, Abdul Malik Kukubaku, Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Clara Berry Kasati is a lawyer and teaches the law. John Abdullahi Jinapor is MP Yape Kusogu and member Finance, Mines and Energy Committees of Parliament. Alexander Kwame Nafeyomaking is member Efutu, member of Parliament Efutu, and also of the Public Accounts, Defense and Interior Committees of Parliament. Dr. Theo Champon was on the phone. So was Lepowura MND Jawula and the President of the GFA, Ket Okreku. I'm Samson Ladia Yenini. Thank you all very much. Have a good afternoon.